Chairwoman Rojas. I really appreciate you calling my item up. And I want to thank the speakers for coming to speak. I think it's very important that we as a democracy always listen to each other and work together with each other, because at the end of the day, as we were speaking earlier, we represent a district as a whole. We're up here as one united family doing what's best for our children, because at the end of the day, it's about our children. So I also want to thank my co-sponsors that sponsored my item during committee. I think the item was explained well during committee, and I'll try to do my best to review it as well. But stories are always important, and I think it's one that I share. So as many of you may have heard already in my speech when I first got sworn in, I'm the proud son of 2 Cuban immigrants that left and had to flee Cuba because of oppression and suppression, which was going on there, and the force on them of several specific political agendas that were coming at them that were unrelated to their country and what they stood for, which in Cuba was the Cuban flag. So I'm very proud of the American flag because it's a flag that provided my family freedom. And right down the street from here, we have the Freedom Tower. The Freedom Tower was where my parents went to receive their block of cheese, their can of peanut butter, and their loaf of bread, which was what they received in order to be able to survive here in this great country. And we're very grateful for that, because that gave them the opportunity to build a new future in this great country that's provided so much to so many of us. So when I walked in after being elected, many in my community will know that I'm one of those that I'm out there working it, and I made the promise to every single door that I knocked, and I want to let you guys know I knocked on over 9,000 doors throughout my campaign. And I told them that the minute I was elected, I was giving them my word that I will be present in the community and that would be visiting our schools, listening to the concerns of our parents, our students, our teachers, our principals, as well as our community leaders. Sadly, when I began to visit some of these schools, I noticed classrooms that did not have the American flag up, but yet had other flags up. I saw flagpoles that did not have a flag in front of a school. And funny enough, as this item has become so political, I was speaking to a reporter last week while I was in Tampa at the school board conference. I was asking about my item, and she was standing in front of a building, one of our school buildings. And she looked up and looked at the flagpole. It was 1:30 in the afternoon. And she said, "Roberto, there's no flag on the flagpole." And I said, "Exactly my point." I won't call out the reporter and I won't call out the school, because my job is not to come here and ridicule particular schools or reporters. My job is to come here and make sure that our schools have all the resources available to them to be able to display that flag. So when I've heard in side comments of, "Oh, we didn't have a budget to buy a flag," "Oh, yes, it's ripped, but it's all we can do," or, "Oh, we don't have a JROTC team to bring down the flag every night." So with weather, we all know we live in Miami where it rains almost every afternoon. Those flags take a beating. So I want to make sure that that was something that was a priority to me as I walked into every school and every single classroom, because at the core of education is what we live for in this country, for our freedom. So when I read my item here, and I'm going to read it just so that we have it on the record, I want to be clear on what it is about. And it's about our American flag, and the only flag that should be flown in our classrooms, unless it is related to the curriculum that is being taught to our students. Because unlike what many have said, my item is not to create hate. It's quite the opposite. My item is to create unity, as this board continues to unify itself in not having any divisions within our classrooms, depending on what country you came from or didn't come from. Because I always tell people, I'm proud to be a Miamian. You know why? Because it doesn't matter what color you are, what country you came from, what your sexual orientation is. We all live together in harmony. And every day you can walk through the street, walk through downtown Miami. This is probably one of the only cities that I've ever walked through in my previous role in the world of education technology, where I traveled for 20 years throughout districts throughout this country. This is probably one of the few places that you see such unity amongst our community, but yet the most diverse. So moving on to my item, the flag policy, the most important thing before I start is this is not changing any rules. And you will hear that when I read my item. This is not changing any rules. This is only reinforcing enforcing, and asking the superintendent to please make sure that they're being implemented across our entire district and not just one particular region. So the item reads, School Board Policy 8810, the American flag and official motto of the state of Florida, states that the flag of the United States shall be raised above each school and or at other appropriate places during all school sessions, weather permitting. The flag shall be raised before the opening of the school and taken down at its close every day. The flag is to be flown at half-staff in mourning for designated principal government leaders and upon presidential or gubernatorial orders. This policy also provides that each classroom shall display a flag of the United States that is at least 2 feet by 3 feet, and that the official motto of the state of Florida, "In God We Trust," shall be displayed in a conspicuous place in all schools in the district and in each building used by the school board. Furthersome, Florida Statute Section 1000.06, Display of Flag, outlines that each public K-12 educational institution that is provided or authorized by the Constitution and laws of Florida shall display daily in each classroom the flag of the United States. It is important that the district adhere to Section FS 1000.06 and Board Policy 8810 to allow the district to remain neutral with regards to the display of flags at schools in accordance with Board Policy 2240. Controversial issues and student expression, and restrict the display of flags that promote a political issue, political party, and political candidates in accordance with Policy 9700, Relations with Special Interest Groups. The agenda item seeks to direct the superintendent to review existing relevant school board policies, state statutes, federal guidelines, and if necessary, amend School Board Policy 8810, the American flag and official motto of the state of Florida, to ensure that the American flag and the official motto of the state of Florida are displayed as described in School Board Policy 8810, and develop and implement a process to monitor compliance with School Board Policy 8810 at all district schools, including but not limited to providing schools with the resources to ensure the display of the American flag outside of each school and inside each classroom. Additionally, this item seeks to, if deemed necessary, initiate rulemaking to amend relevant school board policies and procedures to afford instructional flexibility in the display of flags in the classroom where appropriate per curriculum and in accordance with School Board Policy 5780, Parent Bill Rights. And I say it's very important when we discuss the Parent Bill of Rights. That is a new law that was passed in the state of Florida. We were recently on the news because we were not following some of those guidelines. I don't want to be in the news again as a school board because we're not following the guidelines. So like this policy, I want to make sure that all our policies are reviewed and that we're in accordance with what it is that we're told by the laws that are passed at the state. That concludes my overview of my item, and I will now be open for discussion with the board.
Thank you, Board Member Alonso. I have several board members who have signed up. The first one, Lucia Baez-Geller. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, Mr. Alonso, about this item, because as I mentioned during committee meeting last week, I did have several concerns, and I will be going through them with a few questions at the end, and I would appreciate if I could hear from you. Thank you so much, Board Member Alonso. Before I get to them, I do want to be very clear and state unequivocally that I 100% support the American flag at each of our school sites and in every classroom. I know the difference that it makes standing up to the Pledge of Allegiance as a teacher to turn around and face that flag. It means something in the morning, and it sets a tone for the day, and I don't think anyone here is opposed to that aspect of the item. I also want to make it clear that I wholeheartedly support Recommend 1 and Recommend 2 to review existing school board policies and to monitor the compliance. So I'm a full-on yes for 1 and 2. And if that was what the item was about only, then I would 100% support it right now. But as I told you in committee, I do have concerns about recommend 3 and about the language. I will just start by addressing what concerns me in the body, and I know we all know in the body of the item, it's not an actionable item, but just to be clear, so it's on record, specifically I am concerned in the body where it says political issues, to review restricted display of flags that promote a political issue. Just for me, being in the classroom as a teacher 15 years, I know there are a lot of things that come up that could be, quote, determined a political issue, unquote, that are truly just instructional, but that other people might be able to subjectively think are political. So as an educator, full-blown, lifelong educator, I have to say that that concerns me. Especially I taught high school seniors, where a lot of the topics are, college-bound high school seniors I taught. So a lot of the topics are advanced, and they do talk about some things that, again, quote, would be determined a, quote, political issue. And so as a teacher, I do really fear about keeping this broad, incredibly vague language in the item that could mean so many things, but more importantly, I really fear that this term is so vague that it's going to lead to censorship in our classrooms, which is entirely un-American. And so for that reason, I do believe that we can have issues with restrictions of speech, of freedom of expression, that this will be stifled, and that we will eventually have repercussions because of that, because we all know there are very many federal protections for these things. But now to the action items, the ones that we're talking about, recommend 3, for example, which it states that to, if necessary, initiate rulemaking to amend the policies where appropriate. Well, for recommend 3, just based on what I've been saying so far, this is where I would like to ask you, as the maker of the item, just a few questions, and then you let me know your thoughts, please. So under recommend 3, for example, my mother is from Colombia, my father was from Cuba. And under recommend 3, would I be able to have either the Cuban or the Colombian flag representing my identity either behind my desk or on my desk? Or, for example, if a teacher would like to wear her Israeli flag as a pin, or as a photo of her with a flag in Israel over summer, would that be an issue? So furthermore, for our students, if they want to have a huge flag sewn on their book bags representing their identity, is that going to be a problem if we're talking about the actions in recommend 3? Similarly, as was stated by members of our public, what about the sports teams? Let's go Heat, white hot Heat. I know when the Heat is on fire, we all like to put up those white hot Heat posters in our classroom. I know I did. So is that going to be something that now we have to restrict teachers and students from having in the classroom? And then, of course, you do mention that you would like only flags, quote, which we haven't even really defined, but flags only related to curriculum. Well, what about extracurricular activities? As myself, I was sponsoring 3 to 5 clubs a year in my classroom, and many of those did have posters related to them. And now, but you're saying curriculum, well, extracurricular, it still has something to do with what we do in the classroom and with our school community and our school culture and who we are. However, based on the recommend 3, now I can't have an Amnesty International poster because it's my extracurricular club, which I think would not be good, but that's just me. And then finally, as a teacher, we, of course, want all of our students to be college and career bound. So if I want to put the college I went to inspire my students about my journey as the product of Miami-Dade County here, if I want to represent faithfully where I went to college and fly my flag colors for my schools and inspire and have the kids aspire to something as great, would this now have to be restricted or removed? So as you can see, I have a lot still of unanswered questions, real big concerns just as an educator, and I would just love to hear from you what you think about the concerns I've raised here. Thank you so much, Board Member Alonso and Madam Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Board Member Alonso, sir.
Through the chair, I'd be happy to answer your questions, and I appreciate your enthusiasm as a classroom teacher. And I think one of the important things here that we should all be cognizant of is that this is not removing the teacher's ability to bring in flags that are related to the curriculum that he or she is teaching in the classroom. There's no restrictions whatsoever there, and I've brought this up, we've talked about it. There'll be Hispanic Heritage Month where we celebrate all of our Hispanic countries, and of course, show the flags, be proud of them. There's going to be Black Heritage Month. Show the flags, be proud of them. All types of different things when we talk about International Day, show the flags, be proud of them. But what I really want to focus on here is what it is that we have inside our classroom when it's related to flags. I know you mentioned posters. There's no mention of posters on here. If you want to support the heat and it's okay with the school policy, go ahead, put the White Hot Heat poster up. Definitely not opposed to that, and I think that's great, as well as colleges. So University of Miami, whatever it may be, I'm not opposed to that when it is related to the curriculum and what is being taught within the schools. This has to be educational related. Our kids are going through so much. We were just hearing earlier with Chairwoman Rojas' item when we were talking about, yes, we show in the Florida standards that we're up here, but yet when we really dive in, our kids are so far behind. We have so many more things to be focusing in our classrooms, and honestly, I wish this item would have never blown up to the level it was, because we do have a lot of other things to talk about, but we live in an environment where everything's become political now and creating divisions, and it's really sad, because this is not about creating divisions. It's quite the opposite. It's about creating a unity and neutrality inside of the classroom. I don't want students divided. I want students united, regardless of who they are, and let them express themselves. To your earlier point, wear your pins, wear your book bags. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of your identity. And when we talk about bullying, I was bullied as a young child. I was bullied till I was in 7th grade because I was called fat boy. And I would be pushed around. I couldn't go to the bathroom without fearing go to the bathroom because they were waiting for me there to push me around. So I know what bullying is. So when we talk about bullying, the way that we remove bullying is by removing division and by creating inclusion where we're all one. A flag does not identify us. We are all human. That's what identifies us, that we're all Miamians, we're all students of Miami-Dade County Public School, we're all members of the board of Miami-Dade County Public Schools. That is what unites us, not a flag.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Follow up, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, to the maker. So then I guess to clarify then, just to answer my question specifically, with this, would I be able to put a flag, a Cuban and a Colombian flag on my desk, a straight up flag, sir?
If it's based on the curriculum, yes.
No, sir, it's just based on
Through-
my
through the
identity.
chair, please.
Through the chair, it's
Thank
based
you.
on my identity.
The board policy that's
Through the
currently...
chair.
Through the chair.
Thank
Apologize.
you.
Got to get used to that. According to the school board policy that is currently in place, you cannot display a flag that is not the American flag in your classroom.
Thank
So
you,
you
through
would
the
only display
chair.
that.
So I would have to remove my Colombian and Cuban flag from my desk, through the chair.
I'll refer to the attorney who could maybe implement the law. I mean, what our board policy is in place. What would be the law for teachers with the flags related to them, place them on their desk?
Yes, through the chair. Currently, teachers may display a flag on their desk. There's no restriction with regard to that, at least under the current board policy and collective bargaining agreements.
Okay, thank you. Follow up, Madam Chair. So
Yes.
then, could I put up a pennant flag of a sports team in my classroom, through the chair?
Yes, through the chair. Under the current policy? Yes. Yes, under most circumstances that I can think of right now.
Thank you. Through the chair, under the current policy, may I display flags about my extracurricular activity on site, the clubs on the school site, through the chair?
Through the chair, during school or after school?
No, during the school day, may I relate it to a club that I have after school? Whether it's Boys and Girls Club of Miami-Dade, a flag of theirs.
Through the chair, there may be some flags that may not meet the requirements, but I think most of the flags that you're mentioning seem to fall within the acceptable use of a display of flags during school day. But there might be some others that might not meet that requirement.
And through the chair, are they allowed to display a flag on their person throughout the school day? Through the chair.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Thank you. And just to thank you for clarifying, Mr. Alonso, and especially for saying that since everything that I have already stated, your own personal identity on yours, the student personal identity, some extracurriculars in sports, since you're saying it seeks no change, so then I will continue then to see these to be allowed since our current policy allows these. Is that correct, Mr. Alonso?
Through the chair, please.
Through the chair, sorry,
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Through the chair, I think the policy and the language is pretty clear in that this is not eliminating the ability for any student to express anything about themselves on their clothing. Of course, they'd have to follow school rules. I know we have uniform rules, and we have rules against, political, discussion and controversial issues. So obviously, the principal has some discretion there, as well as the board attorney, as well as our region. So I'm sure they'll have discretion there and follow up on that. My item was specific on the flags being flown inside the classroom, and what flags should be flown inside the classroom. It's not about what a child wears, what a student wears, what a teacher wears. Those are other rules that will be dealt, with human capital as well as with their principal at their school.
Thank you. And just follow through the chair then, and I just want to clarify, you said students are allowed, but as we just heard from Mr. Harvey, also teachers are allowed to represent their identity, as he just literally stated. So just want to clarify that, students and teachers. And I thank you so much, the opportunity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you.
And through the chair, just to rebuttal on that, I made it clear that this was not to limit anybody, and that's why human capital will be the ones that focus in on what our teachers could wear and could not wear, custodial, bus drivers, and so on. They'll deem what's appropriate for them to wear based on current policies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Alonso. We have also signed up to speak Dr. Steve Gowan III.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First and foremost, to the maker of the item, your first item, I want to commend you for the manner in which you presented the item, the manner in which you responded to the inquiries, and the clear spirit of empathy and understanding for some of the perceptions that this item may have rendered. I say that really from my heart because in some cases we have the proclivity to become defensive, and I have not sensed that in you whatsoever. We are guided by Robert Rules of Order. Chapter 2 says we cannot question the motives of our colleagues. I've had an opportunity to speak with you and get to have a sense of who you are and what you're committed to. While Robert says this, Dr. Bendros Mendengal, Maya Angelou says, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And until they prove you otherwise, you take them at who they are. Through the chair, with respect to this item, just have a few comments, and I've had an opportunity to really listen to the speakers at length. I want to thank the speakers that came out in a very respectful, a very professional, and a very sensitive way. I really want to thank you for that. We've had some very tumultuous times over the past several years, and when speakers come on a very challenging issue and one that's potentially divisive, it's always refreshing to have you to present your position in a very respectful way. That makes our jobs much easier. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One key term that is in the Pledge of Allegiance is indivisible, not to be divided. And I was writing notes down as my colleague Alonzo was speaking and my colleague Bias Geller through the chair was speaking, and I've heard a common theme of unity, solidarity, inclusion, not exclusion. So it's always good to know that we emphatically are committed to the tenets of this country, which was built on unity and indivisibility, that we would not be divided. We've had some questions relative to the different types of flags and really getting to the spirit of this nation and this country. Trees cannot be divorced from their roots. Trees cannot be divorced from their roots. Many of us arrived in this nation. Our ancestors arrived here in different ways. Some of us, Dr. Bendros Mendengal, were taken against our will. Some of us fled communism and oppression, and some legally left to find a better way. But one of the things that this nation has represented was a spirit of welcoming, a spirit of inclusion, and a spirit of opportunity. In fact, it was the Freedom Tower right down the street that in the 1960s accommodated and received thousands upon thousands of Cuban immigrants and many children. Board Member Alonzo talks about his parents who came here. I cannot imagine what that was like to leave your country as a child, and I can only imagine what a very dear friend of mine said to me, and she's no longer with me, that she had a symbol of what Cuba represented, and that was a flag. And she didn't grow up in Miami, unbeknownst to many. She grew up in Indiana, because back then, I guess they transitioned different immigrants to different parts of the country. And she is, you know, God bless her, she's deceased now, and I know a couple of people know who I'm speaking about because I love her dearly and I miss her tremendously. Others came to this country and they were met by the Statue of Liberty. We know what that represents on Ellis Island, and we know what New York has become. You have Little China, Little Italy, you have all of these different places because people could not be divorced from their roots. A tree cannot be divorced from their roots. And unlike others, Dr. Bendros Mendengal, when our ancestors were taken from Africa, we didn't come to one place. We traveled that Middle Passage, and we were dropped off in islands like Haiti, Jamaica, Turks and Caicos, other different places along the way before we got here. So this item and this issue is not binary. It's not either or. It's both and. We're very grateful for the opportunity, and I said in committee when the item was presented, recommend one, recommend two. Board Member Alonzo had me at hello. I will always be grateful for the tremendous opportunity that this community and this country has given me, has given my children, and will afford my grandchildren. But I understand also some of the issues of perceived division, and to the extent that we can take a pathway that there are not winners and losers, because that's not who we should be. I believe that we as a community, we as a district, we as a school board, our leadership requires us to be better than that, to not have any winners or losers. And I think there are often pathways for us to do that. It's not an either or, it's a both and. I will say parenthetically, for those who don't know, I know we talked about celebrations throughout the month, but I would be remiss if I did not, Board Member Alonzo, say for the record that African American history, pursuant to state statute, is taught throughout the school year. So it should be integrated throughout the curriculum all year. So it's not a 1 month activity. Many people believe that the shortest month of the year represents the celebration of who we are, but that's not the case. And the questions that I've seen in my nearly 30 plus years as an educator, I have seen symbols in classrooms of people reflecting their heritage and their culture. I had a challenge squaring the Parental Bill of Rights relative to the flag, and that's why I was a little hesitant on 3, but I think there can be a pathway that there's not an either or, there's a both and. I do, for the record, openly, I support provisions outlined in the Parental Bill of Rights, not simply as a board member, but I'm a parent. I am a parent. There are some things that I do support. But I also have an obligation as a policymaker, as each of us does, to be able to balance and square And the question was asked through the chair, and I don't think the answer was given as lucidly as it could be relative to what staff and what the learning environment can reflect. So I would like to, as I contemplate a potential amendment to recommend 3, the policy through the chair, Mr. Harvey, is very explicit, and that's policy 2225. When I heard people citing it, I had my staff to bring it. And policy 2225 is multicultural programs. And it reads, in part, the school board serving a community reflecting many varied cultures and languages is committed to equity in education for all students and to providing, very important point, a learning environment that reflects the cultures, the traditions, the customs, and the historic legacies that comprise the district's population. This will enable students and staff to acquire a broader knowledge base while developing appreciation and respect for individual similarities and differences. So I do think we have a policy position that will not restrict, will not preclude, but does provide an opportunity, not for instruction, because the question that my colleague asked through the chair, Board Member Baez-Geller, was what can a teacher do and what can be reflected in the classroom? So I think at the appropriate time, I would like to proffer an amendment to recommend 3 that incorporates policy 2225, multicultural education, that ensures federally protected flags can be visible as appropriate pursuant to our policy. And obviously there's some additional concerns that one would have. We've heard some comments regarding litigation that happened in Duval County. I did research that very quickly, and this board cannot, not that we choose to, we cannot run afoul of anything that denies anyone of their constitutional and federally protected rights. So, Madam Chair, those are my comments, and at the appropriate time, I would like to come back and frame a potential amendment for the Assembly to consider under recommend 3. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gowan. Is anybody else? Yes, Board Member Kalushi?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Through the chair, I just want to make a comment and just to echo some of Board Member Dr. Gowan's sentiments. And as we were having this discussion, something came to mind, and it was President Ronald Reagan in his last speech. And he said something that I feel is very fitting. If I could find where I jotted it down. But basically, it says, you can go to France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go to Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German, a Turk, or Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American. And I think that that is what is behind this. I don't think it's something that is meant to divide. I respect everyone's identity. I respect everyone's background, culture. I am a daughter of an immigrant myself who came to this country, and my mother was welcomed with open arms. And yes, as Dr. Gowan said, you cannot divorce the tree from its roots. But we have an American flag that unites us. And let's use that and let it fly very high and very proud and unite all of us so that we are not divided, but we remember first and foremost that though we do have our roots, we are united in America and the promises that it has of the American dream. And that's all I wanted to say, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Board Member Alonso. I'm sorry, Kalushi. I'm going now to Board Member Navarro, Vice Chair, who would like to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was not at committee, although I was listening. I was representing the board at Naleo. I do wholeheartedly support the item. I was born in a communist country of Cuba, and this great land gave me the opportunity to not only seek freedom, but to be able to have and education and be free and have the right of freedom of speech, which is protected in our First Amendment right in our Constitution. I do wholeheartedly also agree with Board Member Alonso. It's unfortunate because of many issues that we see in our community. Some of our schools have the flags that are either gone old or are not in proper condition. And we need to make sure that when we enter any building that is, especially a government building, that the first flag we see is the flag of the United States of America. A flag that we not only uphold our right hand to serve, not only us as individuals who are elected, but also all the men and women like my brother right now who's in active duty in the United States Coast Guard, to ensuring that he and others like him in our country, in our armed forces, protect our freedom in this country for all of us, that we take every day as part of when we wake up and be able to breathe and walk and have the freedom that we have. We can never forget that those men and women protect us, and that flag, no matter where they are, no matter whether you're at high sea like my brother, stopping in his law enforcement capacity, stopping drugs that are smuggled into the United States every day, he upholds our flag, and that is the flag that we as Americans look up to. So I want to make sure that as children, as a child that was born in a communist country, where people there are still oppressed, like Board Member Alonso say, and do not have freedom of speech and are being up every day and are locked up in prison because they speak out against the government. They don't have that freedom to be able to say, wow, this is a flag that really provides us freedom. It is a flag right now in Cuba that finds them under an umbrella of oppression. And so we need to make sure that our children know the value of our flag, and that this flag unites under this umbrella, identifies and unites every person that, like Board Member Colucci says, comes into this country, no matter who you are, where you're coming from, what your religion is, what your beliefs are, what your faith is, what your culture is, it doesn't matter where you were born. You are united when you step foot in the United States of America under one flag. And so I wholeheartedly support the item. And I understand and want to thank Board Member Alonso for clarifying some of the misinterpretations of the item. I'm very clear about what this item does. And Madam Chair, at the appropriate time, I would like to request to co-sponsor the item.
Thank you very much. Anyone else at this time? Yes, okay, so you have the floor. Board Member Santos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep it brief. I look forward to hearing, proposed amendment. Clearly, I'm in full support of recommend 1 and 2. I mentioned in committee my fond memories of being a safety patrol, and from an early age in our schools, being taught how to properly care for our flag, how to bring it down, fold it properly, store it properly, and so I'm in full support of recommend 1 and 2. I look forward to hearing the proposed amendment around recommend 3, because we talk about, as is stated in our policy, the state of Florida motto. I also want to remind us of our wonderful country's national motto, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. And that is where our strength draws from. I hope that this proposed amendment around recommend 3 will provide clarity so that we may not find ourselves eventually in a situation where a veteran teacher who may want to display the pride they felt in defending our country by having, the Army flag maybe in their classroom because they were in the Army, may find themselves precluded from doing that because it's not explicitly in our curriculum. Or that we may prevent, a former NFL player who may be now in our classrooms from potentially displaying their sports team's flag, or simply a fan, by the way, because it is not explicitly in our curriculum. I think we have to be really careful about the way that we approach recommend 3. I hope that amendment will clarify that. We also have, for example, as I looked at the visual record of our district across websites, on our police department's flag, we have an amazing picture of our police explorers, and there are the flags that each class makes at the end of their program that are prominently displayed. That is not explicitly potentially included in curriculum, and who is going to be the judge of that? So reserve my comments because I hope that there's proposed language that we can solve for so that we don't find ourselves in maybe the situations that I have just named, and look forward to hearing that language.
Thank you. Board Member Bendros-Menengo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be brief. I've listened very carefully to everything that has been said. A time back, I served as the chair of the African American Commission for the state of Florida. And when Dr. Gallen made mention of the teaching of African American history throughout the year, I'm not too clear on that, and that's not what we're going to discuss right now. But I do want to be clear about that because it is important. We've had quite a conversation, as I said. I want to put on record that the items, yes, 1 and 2, those two recommendations, I can move along with, but I do want to hear more, as my colleagues have said, on 3. Probably as many as of you have been open to emails and conversations and the like. But we're here, as my colleague said, Member Alonzo, we are here to get it right for children. And I always say that what I do here, if it's not about children, I don't want to hear it. I know for sure that, I don't know for sure, I hope for sure that we're all looking at what we need to do to make it right for our children, again, as I said, who are watching. So I will go along with proposals 1 and 2, and I want to hear more about number 3. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Our student advisor, Ms. Pita.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the past couple of days and perhaps like the next following week, I have received no complaints over Recommend 1 and 2. I don't think that I would. I am also in full support of Recommend 1 and 2 as I was born in this country. I am proud to be American, even though my parents are immigrants to this country as well. And I would just like to raise some concerns that were brought up to me through our students through Recommend 3. For the record, I know that this has been in discussion, but I would, through the chair, if I can, like to ask Mr. Alonzo how this board item could potentially impact the expression of our students in the classroom, or if it does limit the expression of our students in the classroom. Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Through the chair.
Board Member Alonzo.
As I was discussing with Board Member Baez-Geller, this is not to limit any particular student's expression of who they are or how they identify or what flag they carry. If you're Cuban, if you're Nicaragüense, or whatever expresses who you are, as long as there's guidelines within the school's uniform policies and you're not violating your principal's uniform policy, this has nothing to do with that. This is particularly focused on the flags that are flying inside of the classrooms. It has nothing to do with a particular person's expression and how they express themselves with a pen or their book bag. But once again, I will refer back, this policy does not discuss anything as to uniform policy that may be enforced in your school through your principal.
Through the chair, thank you so much. Follow up. As sometimes juniors and mostly seniors, many students in our schools take the class American Government and Politics as part of their social science curriculum. How would this board policy impact that specific course or the expression of items in that course?
Through the chair.
Yes.
So it wouldn't impact it at all because this is not impacting anything in which you were discussing within your classroom. That is up to the teacher's discretion within the content of what he or she is teaching you. So this has nothing really to do with what you guys are doing. Once again, it goes back to the American flag being displayed in the classroom and what other flags are there within the classroom. It has nothing to do with the discussion points. We welcome discussion. I think it's what is beautiful about what we do in our schools and what we do here as a board is we want to have open discussion. We want to have open dialogue. We want to be accepting of each other and understand the differences amongst each other.
Thank you. And through the chair, sorry, another follow-up. I know that a board member already brought this up, but there was a concern of certain extracurricular activities, such as, for example, the Model United Nations Club, asking how perhaps this could impact the portrayal of the United Nations flag within their sponsor's classroom.
Through the chair.
Yes.
So there are guidelines for clubs. This is not going into what clubs can and cannot do. Clubs are extracurricular activities that occur after school. So if your club has a flag that you guys flag during your club meeting and so on, this allows you that flexibility to have it during the club. I don't think in any way, and I'll ask our attorney if he could, through the chair, explain on any after-school extracurricular activities. I don't think our flag policy is, or any of these policies that we're reflecting have any impact on that.
Yes, through the chair. There, with regard to especially student clubs, and there's the Equal Access Act and other acts that apply federal law, as well as, even when we receive federal grants, we agree to abide by the Equal Access Act. And in that act, basically, student clubs have a great deal of freedom in forming and engaging in their activities. So this policy would not affect that.
Through the chair,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much to Mr. Alonso for his responses. I still have some additional concerns on recommend 3, but I will reserve my comments until after the proffered amendment has been spoken about. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pita.
And through the chair, I just want to once again compliment you. I know you were complimented so many, but you have great questions. You are a great representative of the students, so thank you so much for doing that
Yes.
and for really being aware of those extracurricular activities and so on. And know that in no way do I want to hurt or impact any of the activities which students are doing in schools. I think that's great when I walk into schools. A lot of the board here, as well as folks that have to go visit in the schools, I want more community. I want more involvement within our schools. So it's quite the opposite. In no way do I want to restrict you all from being able to congregate in the afternoons and make the school your home.
Board Member Espino.
Thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues. Sorry for stepping out a moment ago. I'm under the weather. I'm just trying to get through it. And I regret having to follow our student advisor with her poise and her eloquence. We all come to a particular item and receive the information through a particular lens. And the initial lens through which I reviewed this was, as I mentioned during committee, as a father whose children go to a dual curriculum school. And so when you go to their school, they have the American flag prominently displayed, along with the flags of Brazil, Spain, and now France, which is a curriculum that was recently added. And throughout the year, whether it's Hispanic Heritage, it's true, not just African American Month, but certainly throughout, flags are routinely brought out as part of the curriculum. So I thought this to be nothing more than a underscoring of the importance of the display of the American flag and a prominently tying in the display of flags to the curriculum. Of course, in large measure, people could perceive that as a way of being exclusionary, but I think it's actually highlighting and reinforcing that commitment to what we're doing in the classroom, which is this display of flag and tying it to the curriculum. I myself applaud you for bringing it forward, and you have my support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Espino. And I would like to just very briefly thank the maker of the item, Board Member Alonso. The American flag is truly something that, as an immigrant myself, like others here, so much value the fact that I am in this country, sitting here today, having a discourse the way we are having at this moment in time, where we can express our thoughts, each one of us can address our concerns without fear of any violent actions being taken against us because we have freedom of speech. I thank Mr. Alonso, and as a matter of fact, my colleague on the right, Dr. Gowan, reminded me of when our family got here from Cuba, and we went to a very special place right here, downtown Miami. And guess what? We also got peanut butter and jelly sandwiches there. I'll never forget them. We ate that for months and months. And we thank everyone at the Freedom Tower who work there, who welcome us and help our families survive, because we literally came with nothing. So although I was born in Cuba and I am a very proud Cuban American, being in this country for me is probably the greatest gift that God has given me. And I am so pleased that we have had the discourse that we have been able to have here today in the respectful manner that it has been held. And I just want to remind everyone that the item that we have in front of us, the action that's being proposed in H7, is simply to review our existing relevant policies and state statutes, then develop and implement a process to monitor compliance if necessary. If necessary, initiate rulemaking to amend relevant policies and report on the implementation of these policies. We are not taking any action to deviate from anything at this point in time. We will wait for the report that will come back to us from the superintendent and his team, and at that time, we will have many opportunities to again discuss any future actions to be taken by this board. So I'm proud to have co-sponsored this item. I'm happy to have, again, heard the speakers that came and to, through your comments, have allowed the maker of the item to clarify areas that might have been misinterpreted by some. So at this time, I know Board Member Alonso, you would like to say something. I know Dr. Gallen had proposed to make a friendly amendment earlier. And then at that point, we will take the vote. I think we have exhausted the conversation. We need to move this forward. So Board Member Alonso, I'll give you the last word.
Just to reiterate what you said, Chairwoman Rojas, I thank everybody for this very, very fruitful discussion in which we were able to clarify many of the things that are on this item. I think sometimes we misconstrue things, and no offense towards the folks in the back, but the media loves to create some divide and drama sometimes. Shame on them. But this item was about that. And I'll tell you, when we talk about divide, I received, and I think many of you were copied, over 800 emails in support of this. 800 parents of Miami-Dade County public school students in support of this, in support of neutrality, in support of supporting our American flag, in support of going back to basics in education. So I just want to reiterate that over 800 parents, and I received many of calls from groups that wanted to come here and show their support, speak, and then sometimes create division. And I kindly asked them, this is not about that. This is not about dividing. This is about unifying. So please, send in an email, show your support. If you want, come speak, but speak peacefully. And I hope that we can continue that in all of our board meetings, in which we are here as one united body representing our students. So I thank you all once again, and I welcome further discussion from Dr. Gallen on any suggestions that he might have.
Thank you. Dr. Gallen, sir.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Alonso, for, again, your presentation and your receptiveness, and for us having an opportunity and a pathway to make sure that everybody wins. My amendment is as follows. We have a lot of discussion for recommend 3, but it is, if deemed necessary, initiate rulemaking to amend relevant school board policies and procedures to afford instructional flexibility in the display of flags in the classroom where appropriate per curriculum and in accordance with School Board Policy 5780, Parental Bill of Rights, and School Board Policy 2225, Multicultural Education, ensuring federally protected flags and classes may be visible, as appropriate. That's the recommended amendment.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, discussion? Board Member Lisa Santos.
I think I missed some of that. Do you mind reading just the last part again through the chair?
Policy 2225, Multicultural Education, ensuring federally protected flags and classes may be visible as appropriate. Mr. Alonso mentioned that the administration will kind of navigate through some of those issues if it's not appropriate.
Thank you.
Board Member Alonso?
Through the chair, I don't have a problem with it, but I do have a question for you, because I don't want to create any further confusion in our schools. And what do we consider a federal flag, a federal approved flag? Do we know of a actual list that is out there that our school board attorneys as well as administration can review? Dr. Yang?
Through the chair?
Yes, through the chair. As you indicated, Board Member Alonso, there's not a list, but I think federally protected would be federally protected. There's a provision in school law that talks about the reality that your constitutional rights do not stop at the schoolhouse door, and I think that is some of the challenges that we've seen in districts across the country. But again, if necessary, as the chair indicated, we may not even get to that particular point. But if there is an amendment proposed, it would have to meet the legal sufficiency, and it will have to ensure all federal protections that our attorney would not let come before this board and ask us to vote on a G item if it is out of compliance with federal regulations.
Through the chair, I don't have a problem with that, but I will ask our administration that when they do review this, that we are carefully reviewing our Parents' Bill of Rights. The last thing I want to do, and I know our attorney will protect us from all that, is to be on the news because of something that we're doing that is not following the Parents' Bill of Rights. So long as we are abiding to that and reviewing it, and I have the utmost trust and respect for our attorneys as well as for our superintendent and his staff that they will review this, I don't have a problem with it.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Gallant.
Yes, Madam
sir.
Chair, just very quickly, and I truly received that through the chair. That is why that is there as well. So again, when I talk about it's not an either or, it's a both and, I was very clear about my support of that. So that provision is still stipulated in whatever action comes before this board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Board Member Vice Chair Navarro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wholeheartedly agree with Board Member Alonso that I do, because I do understand the policy stated in item 3, which is the Parents' Bill of Rights, and I too wholeheartedly never want to be in a situation ever again to be cited for violating a state law. I always say that we have a responsibility. We may or may not agree with the law, but we have a responsibility to follow the law, and the law is the law. So that's a stance I've always taken, and that's a stance that I will always take on any item or any item that is before us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. And now we have Dr. Bendros-Meningel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my seatmate just made it clear that we do trust our attorney, and we do trust our administration. Just the statement not the statement, but maybe a phrase, and I need to ask a question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Are we going down the right road, as my Vice Chair just stated? I don't want to be page 1 of the Herald for violating the Parents' Bill of Rights. What you see in this last piece, do you see that we are going down the wrong road, or what do you think, through the chair, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, through the chair. You're referring to the proffered amendment?
Yes,
Or, yes.
through the chair.
Yes,
Yes.
the proffer amendment does not create an issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So at this time, the proffered amendment does not create any issues of concern for the board members, and we all are very grateful to have you, sir, guiding us as our general counsel. Board Member Alonso has stated that he is okay and he is in agreement with Dr. Gallant's recommendation. Then I believe that at this point, we are ready to hear a motion to approve the item as amended, because we are in agreement to make that amendment at this time.
Point of order, Madam Chair. We have to
Yes.
vote on the amendment. It was moved and seconded and then we'll vote on the amendment, and then
Yes,
subsequently the item.
That is right, because that was done a while ago. So we will go back. Let's first vote on the amendment, and then we're going to have follow-up on the amended action. Go ahead. Do I have a motion on the amendment? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now I have co-sponsorships. I have a request from our vice chair to co-sponsor. Anyone else who would like to co-sponsor at this time? Okay, seeing no one else. Thank you. A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, and now do I hear a motion to approve the item as amended?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We now proceed